board president, Carolyn Wysinger, and Alicia Garza from the founder of Black Futures Lab. You're going to enjoy this conversation. It's amazing. Please watch.
All right. Hi, everybody. This is Carolyn Wysinger, the president of the board of directors for San Francisco Pride. And I'm so glad to have an honored guest with us here today. I'm Alicia Garza, one of the founding members of Black Lives Matter. Hi, Alicia. How are you?
Hey, I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing well. I mean, it's Pride Sunday, so it's almost over.
Correct. Correct.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And, I thought it was important to get a chance to talk to you a little bit. We're calling this conversation, None of Us Are Free Until All of Us Are Free. And for me, it really stemmed from, after the demonstrations that rose up in the murder of George Floyd and Tony McDade and others, I woke up one Monday morning and everyone asked me, were we gonna cancel Pride? We literally got demand emails that said, we need to cancel Pride so we can focus on Black people. And I was like, so how does that work? Well, I mean, I'm Black and I know a bunch of other Black queer people. So I wanted to kind of get your perspective on what I'm assuming can be considered a little bit of a cognitive dissonance regarding kind of white people. We'll just go say it, white cis people understanding that now is the time to center Black folks, but really having a divide and thinking that Pride is separate from that. So what are your opinions and views, and what are you seeing in regards to that?
Oh, this is such an important conversation, and thank you for spearheading it, honestly. I don't know. I mean, I want to start off by saying, Black people are queer.
There you go. The end of the conversation.
Period. I'm like, zoom over. But, I mean, I think that it represents, those kinds of comments actually represent some of the challenge that we are facing and the work that we have to do to overcome it. So the idea, right, that Pride is not about Black lives is ahistorical at worst, right?
Right.
But it also represents a kind of dynamic where I think we feel this on both sides, right? I think we as Black folks who are queer feel this, right? Where so much of how people understand queerness, and I use that as a broad umbrella, is through a white lens. And so I know for me, and I don't know if this is true for you, but I have heard a million times in my life that being gay or being queer is a white thing, and that is somehow separate from the fighting for Black lives. And then on the other side of it, this notion that canceling Pride will make more space for Black people is also odd. Because it's ahistorical. So, if there was any time to celebrate Pride, it's right now, especially because we can see the lineage, right, of, an uprising or a series of uprisings, really, leading to a shift in consciousness, conversation, and most importantly, rules and resources around how it is that we make sure that nobody gets left behind. And so when we say things like, nobody's free until all of us are free, that's what we're talking about. And so, no, you ain't got to cancel Pride. But what you can do, right, is make sure that Black voices are centered within this. I want to say, 100% that when we look at, Black lives that are not valued, we have to look at Black queer folks. And when we look at policing in our communities, when we look at gentrification in our communities, when we look at joblessness in our communities, homelessness in our communities, all of that, right, is deeply and intrinsically related to where Black folks are at. And so let's make this Pride, right, a reimagining of how Black lives can have pride as well. Let's just be frank. I want to celebrate folks like you and folks like my family Cheney and, folks who are really out here doing it, living unapologetically as all of who we are. And I also want to celebrate some of the voices that I think have gotten lifted up on platforms, right? Because they are killing the game, like Laverne Cox and Janet Mock and Tourmaline and all these folks, Raquel Willis, all of these people, Miss Major, right? Aria Saeed, right? Like all these folks who have basically said, we're not waiting for your permission to reshape this country and reshape this world. So why not use this time to celebrate our folks who are trailblazing, but also making room and making space for those of us who have always known that pride is about us.
Well, then how do you, and I know you probably are getting this question a lot right now. That's why I'm glad you're here, because I know everybody's in your inbox trying to get interviewed. But there's so many, when we talk about Black liberation, there's so many things to unpack. There's classism, there's homophobia, and then I always think about our trans brothers and sisters. And for me, because they're sitting right at that intersection, they are the main ones we need to be focused on. But so many people still have so many rungs to get down. Do you think that we are doing a good enough job in helping others unpack that? So, for instance, I was in Richmond at the Richmond Revolution March, and I was talking to mostly kids. And I said, hey, I'm the president of San Francisco Pride. And they're like, yeah. I said, yeah. And if you're not down with Black Trans Lives Mattering, then you can't be down with Black Lives Mattering. And they kind of looked like, oh yeah. So do you think we're doing a good enough job in helping people to kind of unpack all the layers in enough time?
I think it takes time. Honestly, I mean, I'm in a bit of cognitive dissonance myself these days because, almost a decade ago is when we created Black Lives Matter, and now we're in this moment where people are like discovering it, and I'm like, what?
You're brand new. You're like
Right. But I'm like, okay, there's room for you too. If you've been asleep these last 10 years, that's fine. We welcome you. And at the same time, I think there's a lot of things that are what I call reckonings right now. One is the reckoning that Black Lives Matter has always been about all Black lives, literally always. And, we got a lot of flack and a lot of heat about that from the very beginning. But to keep it a buck, two of us of the founding team are Black queer women, and the other of us is not queer, right? And she always says we done messed up her love life because everybody thinks she's queer too. I'm like, I think we're making it better, sis, but that's okay. But we have always talked about how we shaped this project in the image of ourselves, and frankly, knowing that as Black people who have been fighting for Black liberation most of our lives, that every space that we have been in up until now has really not welcomed, right? Us as our full selves. We could come into any room and talk about Black liberation, but as soon as we start talking about Black queer liberation, people are like, whoa,
wait a minute.
You done gone too far. And then we get into all the conspiracy theories, right? So I think it is important for people to know that when we say Black Lives Matter, we mean all Black lives. And let's be specific. We mean Black trans lives. We mean Black lives with disabilities. We mean Black immigrant lives. We mean all the damn Black lives.
All the lives. All the lives.
And part of how and why we talked about it this way is because folk have such a flat understanding of who Black people are. So we want to change that story because frankly, Black folks know that in our families, right? We got queer people, we got trans people. Shit, I grew up, with folks who transitioned, you know what I'm saying? And my family was like, well, that person used to be named this and now they are named this. And I was like, okay, right? We got folks in our families who had a roommate for 30 years, the same roommate. I'm like, who got the same damn roommate for 30 years? They lovers. They are in love, right?
Living in a one-room apartment.
Period, right? So, part of this, and I think this is also important, we created Black Lives Matter for Black people. We created Black Lives Matter for us to be able to rehumanize ourselves and see ourselves exactly as we are. We don't need to create new language for ourselves to be safer. Like, what if we just loved each other how we are and really dug into this notion that we really are the protagonists of this moment. And if I see anybody in the future, it's Black folks. So there's that. But then there's also a thing that we're trying to do here, which is push our community to unify. Frankly, we can't get ahead unless all of us get ahead, and that's just facts. And, you know, whether or not white people come to these realizations is on white folks, but for Black folks, that is my business. And as far as I'm concerned, Black people need to be safe around each other. And when we talk about trans lives mattering, you know, we're not talking so much about police and policing. We're actually talking about cis people who, like myself, right, who literally have been shamed about our desires. And so it prevents us from having human, intimate, deep, authentic relationship with our trans siblings. And that is why trans people are dying in this country, because Black trans people are being murdered mostly by people that they know, right? And so there is no Black Lives Matter without all of us. And if you need to hear that from me, well, here you go.
I think they need to hear that from you. That's why I called you. I think Alicia Garza need to tell them, because they don't listen to me.
Well, you know, I'm always down to tell their story now.
You know, another important thing is, you know, we understand that the Pride movement has not always been one that Black folks felt or feel safe or supported or visible in. And, you know, for me as the president of this organization who is pretty much white driven, even though we've had Black presidents, we've had, you know, trans presidents, we've had Asian American presidents. For the most part, when you see San Francisco Pride, you see white people. And, you know, for me, and, you know me, Cheney knows me, we know my intentions, but that does not cover up from trauma and hurt that people have felt. So I know that we've always made our own spaces. You know, I came up in the queer community and Black Lesbians United and Nia Collective and everything out here. So we've always had our
shout them out. You better shout them out. Yeah.
The elders get mad at me when I don't shout them out.
You know what? You better give credit where the credit due.
I heard David John say on the Breakfast Club of all places, he talked about how things like the coming out movement and neighborhoods like the Castro and West Hollywood were not really built for Black people, how this movement was really built to give white, cis, gay men political and cultural power. So how can we as a movement, I mean, I'm not the only Black president, you know, I think they have a Black president in DC, some of the other prides have Black presidents. So how can we now push this Pride movement forward where we don't have to have a George Floyd and Tony McDade to center the whole thing around Black voices? What can we do better? How can we kind of, in our term limits, I got a term limit, do that better?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I can only talk about San Francisco because I know San Francisco now.
Yes.
And let me just say this. When we talk about Pride as a movement that has built power for some at the expense of others, that's on us. And by us, I mean, right, you know, it's odd to me that in the city in this country that is seen as a mecca, a place where people can go to be their full selves, a place where people travel, you know, thousands and thousands of miles just to be in because of not just the reputation, but the experience, right? Of course, there got to be a truck trying to back it up right in front of my house when I'm trying to really do the damn thing. So anyhow, San Francisco has a lot of work to do. San Francisco loves to see itself as progressive, and in relationship to many other places in the country, it is, but not when it comes to Black people. And when it comes to the progressive movement, child, I'm gonna tell the whole thing because, you know, I got tired of being the only Black person in a room, or one of two, or one of three, and then y'all want to call, you know, yeah, like y'all want to call me during Black History Month because you only knew 3 of us. That's a problem. But also it stems from the fact that we have allowed Black people to hemorrhage out of San Francisco because it's too expensive to live there. We have created cultural spaces in San Francisco that don't include Black people. And so when you have, you know, Black people living in concentration on the streets, but not in homes, that's a problem, right? So there's that. And I will also just say that, you know, at the end of the day, assimilation is always going to call our names.
Yeah.
It's always going to call our names. This notion that pride is somehow about inclusion and assimilation is wrong. It's ahistorical. That has never been what Pride was supposed to be about. The way in which Pride has been corporatized, right? That has not been what Pride is supposed to be about. And this is not just on Pride. I mean, folks is trying to do it to Black Lives Matter. You can't go anywhere now without seeing Black Lives Matter all over things that you know good and damn well Black lives don't matter within.
I'll be honest, I called somebody out the other day. They're like, we got Black lives. I said, I probably can ask, and they probably didn't say that was okay.
Pam, let me tell you, I get text messages from T-Chip, and I'm gonna call them out because it triggers me every time I get these damn text messages talking about get your Black Lives Matter gear here. I'm like, what you mean? Wait a minute now, right? So all I'm saying is, you know, I want to make a plea for Black queer folks to actually think about what it means for us to build power. And, you know, I can't fault folk for striving for the things that they're striving for. And in fact, that's what movements are supposed to do, is build power. And I think that as Black folks who are queer, we have something different at stake. And so we also deserve power. But I don't want the same kind of power that the white folks had. That's not actually what I think is going to move us forward. We have an opportunity, because we know how to do this, because we've been forced to forever, to actually exercise power differently and to build the kind of power that brings everybody along and isn't for some of us at the expense of the rest of us. So, you know, we can be doing Black Lives Matter work where we are, okay? So if your organization only got one Black person, if you know, in the Lord's year of 2020, if you are saying, I'm the first Black anything, that's a problem.
Right? The next one, and the next one after that.
Period. So, you know, and it's not about diversifying our spaces, because we know how people do that too. They'd be like, okay, well, let me find 3 other Black people so it doesn't feel so awkward. That ain't it. It's actually about decision making, it's about resources, and it is about power. So if the Black folks in your organization are there, but they're not in leadership, then you have put a lot of symbols in place of substance, right? Black folks are leaders, Black folks are strategists, Black folks are visionaries, right? And so you have to actually not just have Black people in proximity to you, you need to work to make sure that Black people have power. And for some of us, that means we have to give up power. We have to give it up and say, you know what? Do we really need another cis white guy in the leadership role? Or do you think we could do it differently? And really believe that, though. Don't be putting, because I see this too. You know, folks all of a sudden be like, oh my God, Black Lives Matter, let's put a Black person in leadership. And I'm like, now you know good and damn well, that's not the right person to lead. Yeah. So it's not a token thing, okay?
Yes.
You know I'm gonna tell the whole thing now. It's not a token thing. It's just a real, you have to actually believe that Black people are as intelligent as you or more, that Black people are as strategic as you or more, and that Black people's vision is actually what's going to get us free. That doesn't mean that you're not involved in that vision, but it just means you're not at the center. What a world that creates.
Amazing. We have some extra time. So I'm going to ask you one extra question before I get to the very Black question, because I always end with a very Black question.
Yes, I love it.
As a movement, even though you all are 10 years old now, you know, still a fairly young movement, can you tell me a little bit about maybe intergenerational problems or intergenerational, I won't say probably struggles that you have had? Because I've seen that a lot, not just with me, but I've seen it a lot now with the youth leaders in some of our communities, where you have older people that are like trying to discredit them, and they've done so much in just this 1 month. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about intergenerational struggle, about people not bringing people along and really trying to hold on to power?
I can. You know, I have a lot of compassion for this because I'm getting old myself. I'm older, more seasoned, let's say. And don't let this baby face fool you. I don't got no wrinkles, but I got years.
21, I'm sorry.
You know what I mean? I'm like, I got years under this belt. And I will say that I have experienced myself realizing that I don't understand all the things that I think I do, and really feeling a way about that, right? And so in that way, I have a lot of compassion for some of our elders who really firmly believe in the way that they have done things. And that's okay. We all have to adapt to change, and not all change is good change. And that's just facts. And so we got to be honest about that. At the same time, I've been challenged in the last few years to think about what kind of mid G I want to be. Because I'm not an OG. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like,
okay.
I've been in the game for a minute, but I'm not an OG yet. I feel like you can't be an OG until you really kind of cross like 50. I'm
Yeah,
not there yet. I got another
I can go
decade.
with that.
I got another decade, you know. So, but I am now a mid G. I'm somebody who connects to my elders in a different way. And I'm now learning how to connect to folks who are coming up after me, and also learning to deal with my own discomfort. That's what it means to be an adult, right? It's like, actually, that's not about them, that's about me. Learning to deal with change as we get older. Like when I was younger, change wasn't a thing for me. I was like, things are always changing. I would like to be stable. Now that I'm a
Right,
little more
right,
stable, I'm like, change now. I need to plan for that change. And if I can't plan for the change, I'm not sure I'm down with the change.
right.
But with that being said, I've learned so much, right? I've learned so much. Like I am getting politicized right now in a way that I wasn't 10 years ago. And that has been led by people who are younger than me. And it requires me being able to say, wow, there are folks who are really doing it. And they are having a lot of the same questions that I had at that time. I got some answers, but they're also going to have to make their own answers. And what I can do is be a bridge. So I'm never going to let no OG disrespect my young G's. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I'm not going to let the young G's disrespect the OGs, but I think I can help bridge, right? And so that means I have to think about how I show up as a mid G. I will also say this. Um, Nobody in the history of anything has ever um, not allowed themselves to like try some stuff. And, when I was coming up, my mom would tell me, no, don't get no tattoos. You're going to regret them when you're older. And I was like, the fact that you're telling me not to do it is exactly why I'm
I'm
going to
gonna
do
do
it.
it.
And now I got hella tattoos and I don't regret them. I love them all. However, I still have this voice in my head, right, where I'm like, damn, maybe I should have listened to moms. So, all that to be said, I want to make sure that we are considering a few things. Like, one, I think as we get older, we start to see the world as more static than it actually is. We get caught up in our own stuff of having to figure out how to be stable. And that means, in a lot of ways, the world stops moving for us. And for young people, that's different, right? Like, I came up in a different era than folks 10 years younger than me did. Um, and this started a while ago, right? Like I can't talk to people who are not my age about Madonna. Don't nobody know who Madonna is? They'd be looking at you like, who? What you talking about, right? And it really made me feel away. But I was like, yeah, that's not their context. I'm not somebody who grew up in the era of the first Black president. I was already grown, already voting, already cynical. You feel me? I was already like, just because he Black don't mean he nothing. You know what I mean? Like I was already there. And, folks who are coming up after me had that times 10. I
Mhm.
came up during the era of the King riots, right? And for them, they think that's vintage, right? So we just have to like really understand that we all have stuff to offer each other if we could just be humble enough to hear it and take the best, child, and leave the rest, because it will always come back around.
Okay, are you ready for the very Black question?
For the very Black question.
I struggled because I mean I didn't know what to ask, and even though this is not my podcast, I use my podcast rules. I'm shelving my off the wall versus thriller question now.
Okay,
And
fair.
because you and I once had a conversation about me being on BET watching 227, I'm going to ask you,
Love that show. Oh my God, I grew up on that show.
and you
Yes.
can't give me no explanation.
Okay.
227 or Amen?
Oh,
They came on right behind each other on NBC on Saturday night.
wow. Okay, so 227.
227.
227.
Okay, now I'm going to give you a why. I want to know why.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Because when you said that, I remembered that I used to watch all those shows and I used to watch them in succession. And I watched them with my mother because me and my mom would spend a lot of time together in the kitchen. That was like her little space. So she was doing it. She had that little TV on the counter that, you know, you had to pop it on the side sometimes, but it was color, you feel me? So we was doing that thing. And 227 was the only thing that could keep my attention because I didn't really grow up in the church like that. My mom did.
Gotcha.
My mom loved Amen, but I couldn't really relate to it because I didn't grow up in the church like that.
That Vanessa Bell Armstrong at the beginning didn't catch you. Like,
No, it didn't. You know,
it's still me. I go into a Baptist fit every time.
listen, I understand, but my mom, you know, she grew up in the church and she was convinced that she was not going to subject me to having to grow up in the church. So every so often she would feel bad and then she would like drop me off for the whole day with my uncle, you know what I'm saying? And I'd be in the pews not knowing what to do. I'd be flipping through the Bible, being like, I don't know what's going on here. People be singing, falling out in the aisles. I'd be like, Mom, what's going on over there? I just
Yeah, because you got to work up to that. So
you know, falling out too. And I'd be like, why am I here for so long?
And I'm hungry.
Long. It's been hours.
I smell fried chicken in the back, but they won't let me have none.
For real. I'd be sitting in them pews like, I don't know. And I just realized now my mom's was like, I need childcare. I need a break. You got to go somewhere. So go with your uncle. And actually, it was a church in Richmond. I'm finna ask him which one it was.
Oh, please ask and let me know. And I hope it wasn't Pilgrim Rest. Shout out to Pilgrim Rest. I hope it wasn't y'all, because that means I was there. So, thank you so much, Alicia, for joining me. I appreciate you. Happy Pride. And
Happy Pride.
will see you soon, not on Zoom.
Listen, truth, but without Miss Rona, because, you know, we ain't friends.
No Rona. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Family, thank you.
What an incredible conversation. Wow, I am moved.
It was very real. You can tell that they're friends.
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely powerful, and I think it's important to recognize the people who are doing the work every day to make the world a better place and safe for Black people and Black bodies. I mean, we are seeing, God, I feel like a new video every day of the ways in which people are being discriminated against and shamed, and I just feel like we need to hear from the people who are out there making the world a better place and safe. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like we see